are back. It's your boy Tommy D, you know, the one and only. I call myself the kid, the nonprofit sector connector. This program is where I highlight my friends who are making Long Island a better place. I call them ChangeMakers, Long Island ChangeMakers. And each week on the show, I bring somebody who's on the front lines doing important work for business, for our nonprofit sector, and often, like my guest today, and I feel like it happens actually a lot on this show, my friends are connected in both business and the nonprofit sector, and they kind of meet at that crossroads, like I do, you know, the nonprofit sector connector. Christine Deska, what's up? What's going on, my friend?
Thank you so much for having me.
This is so fun. I love this. And you were so ready. You said, we're going to do a TV show today, and you wanted to be all about it. I know you were all about doing the TV show, so I'm glad you did.
Look, TV, not radio.
Not radio, no. You had said I was going to do a podcast. You said, no, Tommy D, I demand we do a TV show today. So I said, okay, we'll do a TV show, and here we are. Listen, we've been collaborating for a long time, a bunch of years now. I mean, I don't know, 8, 9 years? I feel like it's a long time we know each other. How long is nonprofit sector strategies around?
About 8 years.
Okay, so it goes back to like when you were getting started. So we've seen some really cool stuff together. We've done things, we've collaborated. So let's just kind of set the stage, give people context of who you are, okay? So president and co-founder, Nonprofit Sector Strategies. Another initiative that we're working on or work on together is something we created with some partners, the Nonprofit Resource Hub. You're the president of our board.
Yes.
I know you're involved with some work we do at the Queen's Chamber of Commerce as it relates to the working group for nonprofits in the Queen's Chamber, Hunger Solutions in New York. I mean, I can count like my top 5 people in the nonprofit sector like as my friends. I think of you, I think of Ken Serini, right? I mean, these are our people, you know. Tell me about nonprofit for you. Like, why does this even, you know, you created this solution, you know, after you and your partner Frank, your business partner Frank, saw an opportunity in the market, and that's where BellesBoard comes from and some of the consulting, but I don't even know, if I do know, I don't know for a long time, I haven't talked about it, but like where did that even come from? Like, I remember Columbus and stuff like that, but tell me that, like why are you so involved in nonprofit?
Oh, thank you for asking. It's kind of nice to take a breath and reflect on this Friday. I was just telling one of your colleagues, you know, where sort of my initial dreams were, and that was to be a journalist in some way and tell stories.
Really?
And then that quickly shifted into nonprofit work. Early on in my career, I worked for a local politician in the Bronx.
I never knew that.
Right, and then quickly pivoted to work for AARP. And so getting the experience at that national organization was incredible. But even before that, I think most of us who work in and with nonprofits, the reason why we connect so well is because we're drawn to empathy, empathetic communications, understanding humanity, wanting to connect with people genuinely. And I think I realized early on that the place to do that was within mission-driven organizations. And at AARP, it was such a behemoth. And the impact was so incredible, and the machine, seeing that work was inspiring. And so for me, that really connected my desire to give back, my desire for community, my desire to be an advocate and learn, like a lifelong learner. And so it started there, and almost 10 years into working at that giant organization.
That was like your first like real gig, like real like grown-up job?
Well, I would say the local politics piece was a grown-up job, but no, I think you're right, because it was such a professional organization and where you got to see all the layers, and really my kind of headfirst dive into strategic planning in such an interesting way as a 23-year-old person.
Is that what, so you were involved with the strategic planning? Like, let's go back a second. So it's AARP is this big national, if not international, correct me if I'm wrong, but international organization. You were like the local New York chapter of that, or is it part of the big organization?
It's part of it, but it's a separate entity, the New York office. But they did do such a great job with strategic planning that they had a role for every state office. They had a role for every staff person. And so I take that with me into every strategic planning project that I'm a part of, really making sure that all of your employees feel invested and connected to the overall strategy and pillars of growth, because I saw that from such an early point in my career to really see the benefit.
So that everybody's voice is heard, that everybody has a seat at the table, because the organization only works if everybody's bought in, and not just bought in, but I guess that the strategic plan has concern for everybody's interest, yeah?
Yes, you need to feel a part of it. You need to feel like you were able to weigh in.
Yeah.
And that is quite a challenge when you're
Especially
dealing
larger
with
organizations.
51 different offices and a lot of moving pieces, and every state having different advocacy needs and goals and all of the things.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So when you were able to see it, I've never heard this story, by the way. So when you were able to see it at that scale, with so many different stakeholders, just internally, we're not even talking about outside, but just these
Right.
51 or so different offices, and then you go into an organization that may have 150 or 200 employees, right, and maybe it's 12, 15 departments and things like that. You're taking that big picture stuff and being able to bring it, for smaller than that organizations, right, that have.
Yes.
Yesterday, I was at an event, and somebody who's a friend of ours in the nonprofit sector runs an organization with 3,000 employees and 100 programs. Like, what? Like, I thought I couldn't focus.
Right.
But like, that's challenging to have such. So when you go into big organizations like that, what do you do?
Well, you start with the basics,
Yeah.
right? There are core best practices that are the beginnings of a great strategic plan. So assess sort of the past plan. I'm sure with an organization of that size, they have something on the books
Sure. Yeah.
or several iterations of it.
Right.
And just really kind of tease out how effective has the planning process been? What do we want to improve? But there's a process and a roadmap that you define early on that's kind of custom for each organization. And their needs. But it certainly depends on the scale and the size. But you can take the core principles of a good planning process, like I mentioned, employee engagement, buy-in. Those things are critical, and they're often left to the side of a planning process as opposed to proactively kind of addressed head on.
So why, if they're left out, what's the challenge with that? How could things really go awry if they're not enrolled?
Well, you could probably speak to this better than me, but when you don't feel a part of a positive culture, when you don't feel connected to the mission of your organization, when you start to lose touch with leadership, when you start to not feel trust and a sense of belonging, then you put yourself at risk of your employees going elsewhere and losing credibility. Right, so it's really important to keep that connection to the plan. A colleague of ours, Larry Grubler, he always tells the example of asking the person cleaning the floors at NASA, what do you do? And he says, I'm helping someone get to the moon. 100%. And that is, I think, the best way to encapsulate what you would want any employee at your organization to be able to say, that they know the critical 3 goals of the mission.
So, and they should, right? And that's the culture, like that's the DNA. And I love that story that Dr. Rubler, and first of all, he's one of my favorite people. He was the second guest I ever had on Philanthropy and Focus. Self-promotion here. I'm about to hit 200 episodes of that show.
That's incredible.
What? That blows my mind. Katie McGowan from Horseability, first guest. But Dr. Grubler on my show, and I say this a lot, he goes, Tommy, and it leads into another mission I'm on, ending the stigma around the mental health conversation. He said, Tommy, you know what we need? We all need support at different times. And that's so true. And and I'll always remember him telling me that. But yeah, if it's not I'm mopping the floor, it's I'm helping us get to the moon. What the context of that, and to see it that way, and
to
wow,
feel
mindset.
that pride when you
100%.
say it.
I'm all in. I'm part of the team. I just happen to be doing this, but this is where I am, right? Not everybody can be in the capsule, right?
So when you can activate your employees to be those effective, passionate ambassadors, and at AARP that was thousands of volunteers on top of it.
Yeah.
But now a lot of our work is around board members also being activated as those critical ambassadors, and that is challenging.
I have so many questions about that.
Unpaid volunteers, how do you corral them? How do you keep them engaged? It is not easy.
Look, I sit on boards. I've been around boards. By no means do I claim to know that I understand how to fix these things in a lot of cases, but I do want to just say, like, sometimes folks are just in the seat. And I actually just resigned from a board recently because I'm on one board and I realized it wasn't full engagement from other people on the board, right? So I scratched my head and I realized I'm this person on that other board.
And you are so well intentioned.
100%.
That can happen.
100%.
So,
And so again, I realized, and I go, because I wasn't like cranky at these other people, but I was just like, this isn't really working. This is not a good fit because you all are not showing up. And then I realized I'm not showing up over there. So I stepped down. I said to my friend, who's a friend of ours, who runs the organization, I said, look, put me in some advisory thing. You know I'm going to take you. I'm with you. I'm always going to support what you're doing. But I said, this isn't really fair. It's not even just to me. It was not fair to the organization, the rest of the board. Put that aside. My question is, though, some folks are there. Sometimes we don't know why they're there. And I think there's like some level of assessment that needs to happen. And I think it comes from a position of strength, not be like, oh, well, we can't really ask too much of folks because they'll leave. Well, okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of great ways you can go about kind of hitting that head on.
Yeah.
And so we work with organizations to do self-assessments of their board of directors. And that's, you as a board member saying, did I do what I intended to do? Did I not? Why could that be? What am I aware of? What am I not aware of? Where is there lacking board education? And so many of these things can sort themselves out through good exercises.
Sometimes people wanted to go, but somebody might want to leave, and I remember being on a board, and it was more of it's a 501c6, right? So, and I was there because my friend was the president of the board, and I said, look, I am going to have to go soon, but I knew he sort of needed some support, not so much like governance. That's not.
Yeah.
Gang, you don't bring me on your board for governance. But
probably networking.
No, networking, maybe some relationships. But I know who I am, and the fact if I stepped away from the board, it would sort of make it difficult because I'm a big personality and stuff. So I said, look, I'm here to support you and do what I do. I'll come to the meetings. I'll do the. Yeah. But eventually, the time was right where I had to go. Look, this is it. And he goes, we're good now. Thank you. Yeah. And like you have to, but that was an open dialogue. I knew I wasn't going to be adding a certain level of value, but sometimes in that scenario, we understood each other and we knew why I was still there in that case. But some folks are ready to exit, and it's not always easy to break up or move on. Yeah.
I mean, we share a lot of information, do a lot of sort of exercises in difficult conversations. Yeah. And they are difficult because you don't want to damage the dynamic of your board. You want to make sure there's a place for everyone who cares about your mission. And that can be a lot of different formats. So we're working a lot on something called How to Build Your Governance Pipeline. It's actually a new module we're developing for our technology product, but also just in terms of how to approach this from a services standpoint. So for example, when is an organization ready to consider a baby board or a youth board or a group that is different than that requires less management but an engaging space for people who aren't quite ready to join your board? How are you kind of building this pipeline? And then similarly, for folks who are ready to roll off your board or who you want to roll off your board, making sure there's an advisory board space for them, or you have that difficult conversation and hopefully you have a term coming to an end, not necessarily a limit, but a term coming to an end, and at that point, corralling the right people on your nominating committee, hopefully, to address head on that, how do you, hit on the positive aspects of that person's service, not isolate them.
Yeah, it's tough. These are people.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy.
People.
You're dealing
communication.
These are human beings, and communication is difficult enough. In your own home, it's difficult, right? In my own home, I mean.
Yes.
So a couple of things are popping up. So many ideas are bouncing around in my head. The first one is, you started to talk about it. You mentioned our platform, our tech. Let's not take an opportunity away. What is this platform? I know what it is, but what is it? Tell everybody.
Yeah, so before I mention that, I will just say that our company, Nonprofit Sector Strategies, right, because of my background and what we set out to do, we lead with education. And I appreciate being here, acknowledged as a change maker, but really cannot compare to the nonprofits that we serve that are truly on the front lines. Our goal is to support them in becoming more sustainable, more impactful, all of the reasons that they're so needed in our community, and now more than ever.
Yes.
And so we lead with education through the strategic planning supports, through board management supports, with nonprofit sector strategies. But early on, I would say in the first year, as we interviewed executive directors and leaders of nonprofits, a pain point around board management kept coming to the surface over and over. And my business partner Frank and I, as board members ourselves, sort of did a market analysis and saw that there was an opportunity for a better board management solution to really serve small and medium-sized nonprofits.
Now let me stop you. I mentioned Columbus before, and I don't, we're talking. You were at the Columbus Citizens Foundation, and
right.
Frank was on the board, and you were working there, correct?
Right. So I was the director of programs, and Frank was one of my lead volunteers.
Got it.
I told him I was leaving, was ready for something more challenging, and I was going to work with many, many nonprofits. I told him, not just one every day.
And that when you said that, you meant, I'm going to go be a consultant. That was what you meant? Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
My business partner, Frank, his background is in technology and software. And so he had kind of his eye on what could we develop. And I didn't even realize that at the time.
Sure. Oh, you didn't know he had that vision?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
That's where he would go with this.
Sure. It's awesome. It's great, though, because, right, just see the world through a different lens, right? Solving a similar problem, but in a different way. And that's partnership.
Right. And so in about a year, we launched our product called BellesBoard, which we named after my older daughter, Annabelle. Because the other products kind of have boring names, and we wanted to stand out.
Be fun and cute, right?
Yeah, I think we have a story that resonates, and so it's really rewarding to see how nonprofits can lean on us for both resources and best practices. We have it all over our website, but also really lean into a reliable, technology platform.
So, SROI. So I feel like, when I first met you, I was like enamored with this whole thing. And I was like, and then I would go around telling, I have this friend, Christine Deska, and she knows she's the guru when it comes to SROI, and on and on and on. I go, net. And I would just be like, this is Christine. I mean, I think that's even more important than ever for storytelling. Talk to me about that.
Oh my gosh, that was a blast from the past.
Remember that?
Some of our first working together was around focusing on social return on investment.
I think we knew each other, and then you did something like with Ken Serini. It was like back before COVID when we used to do things in like the real world and stuff like that, when people would be in rooms with people. I'm kidding, we do that again. But it was, I remember being like here on the island, and I could probably tell the room we were in. And you were one of the speakers about this topic. So talk to us about that topic. What is it? What's the acronym even mean?
Right. So just as with a for-profit, in terms of always calculating what their regular return on investment is, I work with nonprofits a lot on calculating their social return on investment. And what that means is finding ways to quantify your impact. And I always say the caveat that this is not easy. If it was easy, every organization would have figured this out.
Right.
And it really requires a lot of research and digging into, if you've served this many people and now they no longer need these support services, what's the impact on the economy? Or in particular around my work with Hunger Solutions, even when I partnered with them years ago, it was certain formulas exist, right? Like if someone's spending their EBT dollars at your local store, money they would not have had without help from a vital program.
It helps the store, which is a community business, right?
Yeah, so there's a multiplier for the economic
Because now
impact.
I can maybe hire another employee because I have more demand in my store.
Or just the store's making more money,
make money.
bar none.
Yeah.
So really digging into what, based on your impact metrics, what can be quantified to share your impact in that way as well.
Why should anybody care about social return on investment? I do. I understand why. I think I understand why you should. But who's
Because
going to
donors
tune in?
care.
Thank you. That's who's going to tune in,
Donors
right?
care. They care about your organization's impact story,
Yeah.
and they need to see that clearly communicated. So infographics are key to do that, but you don't have the right infographics if you don't have the right
You need data.
social return on investment.
Right.
And now donors are becoming more sophisticated
Sure.
and really want to know how's this money going to really relate to your mission. So it's a lot for nonprofits to manage all of this in addition to
Sure.
just keeping their programs going. But once you kind of figure out your formula and how you're going to communicate, it's so much of it is around the messaging of your work
well,
too.
and you know, it's interesting. I talk to a lot of development people in our world, a lot of fundraising people, and that's all about storytelling. And yes, it's stories with data. It's stories that are with social return on investment to tell what's actually happening. But it's storytelling.
You need both.
You need both, right? You can't just say, "Hey, look at us, we're great." That's cool. Everybody's great. Like that's not going to be enough.
Right.
Yeah.
There's no shortage of compelling social missions out there because we live in a complicated world.
Yeah, where there is the necessity for all these organizations. You know, what do you see as opportunity for organizations to? Because you talk about donors. You say, I want to break this apart for a second, actually. We talk about social return on investment, we talk about infographics and showing the stories. Are you talking about major donors? Are you talking about foundations? Are you talking about rank and file, regular individual donors? Like, where is this data and storytelling more important?
It's a variety of segments that you would target. Of course, when you think of major gifts, you're talking about a much more in-depth relationship building process, right? And that's a lot where we focus because board members can really play an integral role in growing a relationship with a major donor because they're your best ambassadors. Sure. You should be able to turn to them for that. But when you think about the other information, you're thinking about your everyday person that has I don't know, a few $100 a month maybe to part with, or if it's a younger person just getting started, $10 a month, they might be willing to commit online.
Yeah.
So the first thing they're going to do is look up your website. They're going, can I even gather what the mission is from this?
Yeah.
Then if it's a more sophisticated person or donor, they're going to look at something like Candid, formerly GuideStar, and the Foundation Center, and see what's your rating. Are you being transparent about your giving? Are you being transparent about your impact? Do you have your strategic plan posted?
Yeah.
And that could be the reason why someone chooses your organization versus another. And there's a variety. There's Charity Navigator. There's a host of places someone will look. And nonprofits need to be aware that, and most are now, that you need to show up with your best foot forward on these platforms because there are many, many options. Even if you've narrowed your giving desires down to a specific area, for example.
There's still a lot of choice there, right?
If you're passionate about immigration versus animal rights versus whatever it might be, you're still going to have many, many, many choices. So how do you stand out from the others? And it's not competition always. That's a tricky word for nonprofits. Yeah. It's it's partnering and working more with other organizations also, but you want your organization to stand out.
Yeah, I love that, it doesn't have to be competitive. And we spend a lot of time with many organizations, you and I, separately and then together on some different relationships. And I think I always get frustrated when people will say, well, we're going after the same dollars, or I hate this word being used in this scenario, but we're fighting for the same dollars. And I'm not really big on believing that there's actually not enough resources. I believe access is a bigger challenge. And now I'm going to get on my soapbox, which I thought I left at home in the attic, but I guess I brought it with me. But I think if we find ways to bring programs together and collaborate together, there could be much more lift than there is if we're just like in our own silos. What do you think about that?
Well, every time someone comes to me and they say, we're thinking of starting a new nonprofit, I just say, one moment, just have you done your research?
Did you Google
to
it yet?
see what other organizations are serving are meeting
Yeah.
a similar demand for the need what you're planning to deliver, what your mission could be, and just please consider, exploring partnerships or making sure you talk to those directors before you incorporate your own entity, because there's so much opportunity for partnering.
And you know what I've said, and very similar to that, I say, you can become a program in an organization that already has everything set up. I mean, we don't need to spend time, you and I, talking about, well, now you got to hire employees and get workers' comp and get a board and go on and all, like, the things I think at from an employee benefits perspective and a liability perspective to governance and all these other different things that if you just go take your great idea and bring it over here, maybe become an employee of this organization or you consulting with them, versus becoming a nonprofit and just adding all these other things. The thing that always got me, I grew up in selling, well, I didn't grow up, I wasn't like 7, but like when I was like 24, I went to work for ADP. And we sold payroll services and workers' comp and some HR solutions. And I always go, so this guy was a painter, right? Like he had a truck and he painted houses. And then all of a sudden now he's got 3 trucks and 9 employees and he's a different guy. He's a business. He's like, I just want to paint houses, man, right? Things come with that. So that's just what it brings up for me is like, well, maybe you don't need to form an organization. There's probably something out there that you could be additive to versus trying to figure out the whole thing.
And better to sort of do that research in the beginning. I've facilitated conversations where the goal is to figure out, should we dissolve our organization? Should we fold into another organization? Because there's a struggle for capacity, there's a struggle for funding, and the impact might be better had made elsewhere. And that's tough at that point, because now you've created something and you're trying to scale it back down, and that comes with a lot of work.
There was something, I was at an event yesterday, and one of the organizations was on the panel discussion. I'll tell you about it later on because we're going to run out of time here. But they have the infrastructure, the back office for organizations. So from a capacity perspective, they've come together, and I think the right term would be merge. And they've merged together, and they leverage all these back office features. Their board is one board. It's a really, really cool concept. We'll talk about it later. But where do you want to, how can we help you out? We got like 30 seconds. So how can we help you in your organization?
Huge plug to the Nonprofit Resource Hub. We didn't really get to touch on that.
We did not, no.
And that's a nonprofit trade organization that is based on Long Island. You should know because your business is one of the founding members of the Nonprofit Resource Hub, but it is completely free for nonprofits to join and just have a place to turn for expertise, additional guidance, resources, and community. And so I would leave everyone with check out nonprofitresourcehub.org because that's our meeting ground. And I think we have an event coming up.
We do have an event February 10th at Long Island Children's Museum, so we'll see you there. I'll be the guy making the networking happen. What about nonprofit sector strategies? What's new? You get 30 seconds. Tell me about, you get this cool thing going with BellesBoard. There's so much going on, man.
We are having an exciting year. We have a fantastic partnership with a company called BellesBoard that allows us to integrate with the donor management platform, but also within our own platform, just being able to really dig into board members and fundraising in a new way has just opened up conversations that I never expected us to have in the beginning, but that's the evolution and the fun.
It is evolution. How do they check you out? What website?
BellesBoard.com, I would say, is our main website.
BellesBoard.com. I love that we're friends. I see us doing all really cool stuff like forever. Forever. And thanks for being here on my show. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so fun.
We'll do it again. We'll just make it. Next time we'll do radio.
Radio would be great.
Listen, gang, it's your boy Tommy D. I'm signing off right now. This is Long Island ChangeMakers. How cool is this? What do I get to do, man? I just hang out with cool people doing cool things. I tell you this, make it a great day. This has been another In Focus production. Take care. Bye.